Alright, this video I want to talk about why the Middle East might have a little bit of a beef with the United States. Um, in the Western nations, United States, England, major major powers. I was going to do this in a series, but I'm going to try to get it all in like a 5-minute video. I don't want to bore you guys with a history lesson or anything like that, but I do feel that there's little things unknown, and a lot of people don't really realize why such things are happening. But hopefully this might open a couple eyes, get people to understand it a little more. It really all began right after World War One. You had Britain and France. After Ferdinand was killed, they entered World War One with the United States. Well, Britain and France entered, and then the United States came in at the end. But after the war ended, the Ottoman Empire had sided with the Central Powers, which is Germany, Austria, and those nations. And they basically, because the Ottoman Empire and the Central Powers lost, and I'm not even going to get into the whole reparations that we gave the Germans and a few of the losing countries after the war that were looking at it today were completely ridiculous, which led to the depression in Germany and the rise of the Third Reich. But in the Middle East, which is what I'm focusing on in this video, is how we treated them after the war, how the Western nations treated them. Once the war ended, the Ottoman Empire was split up into a bunch of different regions for the winning countries. And when they split these countries up, they didn't pay attention to, the religious views in that area. I mean, prime example would be Iraq, how that was split up with all the different countries who were or all the different religious sects who aren't quite friendly with each other. These countries were split up, oil was found, and that slowly begins a period of uprisings in these Middle Eastern countries due to the oils and the Western countries smashing down the uprisings. And then World War II hits. Oil's definitely a big factor in that. And it all goes back to oil, in my opinion. But oil's a big factor in that. We have so many things that need oil: aircraft, tanks, transport, ships, everything needs oil by then. And so we start drilling. And then after World War II, the infighting begins in the region. You have Suez Crisis, the Six-Day War, Yom Kippur War, a bunch of different situations like that. But then you have like Iraq, and we're jumping to the 80s here. The Iraq and Iran War, 80 to 89. We were supplying, due to the Cold War, because by this period, of course, we were in the Cold War with the Soviet Union and communism. We were supporting Iran. We put the Shah in power. We put a bunch of puppet regimes in power over in the Middle East. But we put the Shah in power, and he was pretty brutal, from what I've heard. But we put the Shah in power, and then we put some forces in. They were actually flying missions up into the Soviet Union, testing missile defenses, anti-aircraft defenses, and things like that. And they were flying through Iran. They would basically say there were training flights that got off course, things like that. I read a very interesting article about that. But so while we're funding Iran, the Iran-Iraq war starts, and this is after the fall of the Shah. We had funded Iran a good bit. We've given them military equipment. We gave them F-14 Tomcats, things like that. You can still see they have F-14s. But then the Iran-Iraq war starts, and we begin the whole funding the Iraqis. And so basically we have our weapons from Iran fighting our weapons from Iraq, while all that fun stuff goes on. And it's much more complicated than this, but this is just a really, hopefully, simple way of explaining how much meddling we did in the Middle East, setting up puppet regimes, the coup d'etat in Iran to put the Shah in power, the Shah coming out of power, just how much meddling we did in the Middle East, which kind of gives them a bad taste. And, of course, a general dislike for us, especially due to petroleum, the oil, and things like that. So, yeah. Hopefully this explained a little bit. If this is a horrible video, just tell me and I won't try anything like this again. But thanks for watching. I hope you guys have a great night.